How does that look?
I'm not saying that. You get some sense that there's a handful of stocks.
Look at that. I mean, you could tie that to the market. Bang. Tim Seymour, you got a big old smile on your face, and I
Yeah, I
think I know
do.
exactly why.
It's a happy day. Look, we were counted for dead. Everybody said nobody wanted to play for the New York Mets. And in a blink of an eye, we spent $250 million to bring in four major free agents. But really, the most important is a man named Max Scherzer at the top of the heap, arguably the marquee name out there in the free agent pool this year, and a winner, Guy Adami, a winner. It's going to teach us how to win.
It's amazing you had to
You're
pay the
snickering.
guy. I mean,
Yeah,
I am snickering because they had to pay him basically $45 million a year for 3 years.
43.
I think Max is going to be 43 next year as well, in a year where there might not be baseball. So in typical Met fashion, they're paying a guy probably not to pitch for a year or so.
Well,
Good for
I
them.
know this reminds you of the Carlos Beltran, where we had to pay him more to come to New York, and then ultimately he settled on less money to go play across town in the Bronx. So I know this makes you laugh. Although what makes me laugh is the fact that the Yanks did pull off a little bit of a trade of their own yesterday, or they actually did a major signing. They picked up a minor league shortstop, as every other major shortstop gets signed around the league, but from guess who played for the Metropolitans last year. Good, congrats on the Jose Peraza signing, and I wish him well. Look, he's one of our boys. Between that and our ex-manager now at third base for you guys are going to look a little bit like a remade Flushing version of the Yankees.
Yeah. Well,
Congratulations.
what the Mets did was the Mets basically they took their queen and you basically moved your queen out. Now it looks like a bold move, but now your queen can fall prey. The Yankees are playing a masterful game of chess. They're moving some pawns around, waiting for the bigger move to present itself, which, by the way, it will. I'm sure Met fans are thrilled that once again they win the month of November and December. Unfortunately, the World Series is played in October.
Look, so because I can influence sporting outcomes just by thinking a particular way, let alone rooting a particular way and outwardly showing emotion, I'm not going to say a word. I'm going to say we've won nothing here. But sometimes buying a new culture is what an acquisition is all about. In this case, I think this is the parlay into the world of companies and markets. I mean, there are companies out there who on their own just aren't executing and need that acquisition to take them to the next level. I want to hear which companies you think are those companies.
It's interesting you mentioned that, and I'm going to give you the answer. I'm just going to ask you a quick question just to throw.
Okay.
So, who do you think has been the most dominant pitcher last year, notwithstanding? Obviously, he had some injury issues over the last 4 years. Who would that be?
Either Max Scherzer, Jake DeGrom, maybe a distant third would be a Garrett Cole. Is that where we're going here?
Yeah, I would say Jake DeGrom is clearly that person. I only mention that because when Max walks into that Met clubhouse, whenever that may be in this potentially strike shortened season, he will be making more than two times of what Jake makes. How do you think that's going to make Jake DeGrom feel, Tim?
Jake has an opt out, I think, after this year. He's going to get paid. And this guy is as much of a good soldier. So I'm not worried about that. I appreciate your thinking about those issues for us. But if I'm Apple, do I need to do a deal of some kind right now? People have been counting Apple as the company that's been sitting on top of the heap. Do they need to do a big deal because they have more cash than God?
Well, I mean, the stock suggests is sitting at all-time highs. They don't really need to do anything and just continue to do what they've been doing. But $250 billion, $250 billion on their balance sheet, some would suggest it's actually a detriment to the stock, and they need to put it to work somehow, whether that's buying back their stock, creating some ridiculous dividend to pay to shareholders. I don't know. But I think what you're saying is maybe they need to do an acquisition. Beats, I think, was their biggest acquisition. I'm sure that's not correct, but Bates might have probably been the biggest one in terms of headlines, but they really haven't done much else.
So companies that have a valuation, and I know Apple, at least relative to itself, the valuation's doubled in the last 5 years. This was a 12, 13, 14 times company that now trades close to 30 times earnings for folks at home that don't entirely understand what that means. It's a case that I think the company has remade itself along the lines of a services company and doesn't need to do the splashy deal. And in fact, probably will continue to evolve into the smart car or the automated car or the autonomous car. and or something that we haven't even thought about because that's what they do. But I think of the pharma world as a place where again you're only as good as your pipeline, and a lot of these companies need to do something overnight sometimes.
It's interesting. I mean, Gilead's one of the companies that we talk about all the time. Perhaps they need to
Yep.
do something on the acquisition front. It's funny. I got an email from somebody. They asked me to be on their Slack, and I literally had no idea what they're talking about. I mean, but listen, Salesforce spent almost $30 billion for them a year ago, so maybe I should get up to speed. You mentioned another company we should talk about is probably Zoom. Were you a Zoom fan as a kid, by the way? Channel 13, I think it was PBS.
Zoom ZOOM box 350 Boston, Mass. 02134. Send it to
I think
Zoom.
that's
So
right.
it's so
That's a good
weird
zip.
how it's yesterday. I see those bad rugby shirts they wore and all those goofy little games they played, but I liked it, and I love PBS, by the way. Donate to PBS. That's a great network.
Speaking of Zoom and 02314, whatever you just said, and yesterday, I mean, I will tell you that Peter Jackson piece on the Beatles is fantastic. It's must watch, especially for somebody like you that has musical, wait for it, Tim, chops.
I've got musical chops, although you start talking the Beatles and nobody's got their chops. I'm amazed that you're even giving the Beatles their just due. I mean, you don't have them anywhere in the Guy Adami Spotify list. You don't probably have a Beatles song in your top 50 of all time. Why are you acknowledging the mastery there?
I pretend not to like the Beatles. I do. There, I will tell you, as you just mentioned, they're not in my top 10 bands of all time, not even close. But there are a number of Beatles songs that occupy my 715 Spotify songs. And once again, I've come to realize Paul McCartney is an absolute genius. And he was, again, wait for it, the driving force behind the band.
I think he was, and I'm a McCartney fan, and I realize there are a lot of Lennon fans out there, and it's unfortunate what they do to Ringo, because I think Ringo was underappreciated. I think he was an undervalued asset just because he was the guy that didn't need to share the limelight with the two greatest songwriters of all time, maybe. Argument the Beatles are to music what Apple or possibly maybe Amazon, obviously to the world of e-commerce and retail. By the way, I don't think Amazon needs to make an acquisition at any time, although they are probably the most acquisitive of all the companies that we talk about. And we don't often talk about the deals that they make that are in logistics and ERP and distribution. And at times they've threatened to pick up their own fleet of jets and challenge FedEx and UPS. They're kind of doing their own thing, much like the Beatles did. And there's been some hullabaloo this week as Paul McCartney, who we've just thrown all the accolades in the world at, has referred to the Rolling Stones as just, if you heard them through a wall or outside of a venue, you'd think they were just a great blues cover band. How about that? Boom, boom, McCartney.
Is that what I think they call that tossing shade? Although I'm sure he didn't mean it that way. Maybe we can have Paul McCartney on commercial break and we can hash it out, Tim Seymour.
Well, he's a big fan, and he may be milling around the airport somewhere here, but I know we are. If you're there, we're here. Commercial break, Reach TV, everyday guy. What time?
6 p.m., Tim. That is Tim Seymour. I'm Guy Adami. As he mentioned, we're commercial break. We'll see you soon, folks.